Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you again for everyone joining us today. We were excited to talk about this. This is my second webinar, so I appreciate you all for being here, and I hope you enjoy this session. Hello again to Andrew, my customer success counterpart. All right, so today is a session for everyone. We're going to talk about how using design tokens can unify styling across products. This is our session for August 2022. And let's see here. I am our speaker for today. My name is Jake Love, Senior Solutions Engineer here at Knapsack. The agenda that we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about design tokens. We're going to look at those from a high level and just kind of talk about the concepts. We're going to go through cross-functional. We're going to talk about how tokens are for designers and for developers. Got a little shameless plug in here as well for the Knapsack token engine. And of course, we're going to do a live demonstration. We're going to run through implementing token-based styles. And of course, we're also going to create some time at the end for some QA. So let's go ahead and just jump into this. So what is a design token? And I think, this could be a loaded term in your Google search. There's a lot of articles, a lot of clickbait about what a design token is. And so we were hoping to just spend a little time right here to just kind of discuss what that is at the smallest level. So in fact, that's the first item on this list. So design tokens are the smallest repeatable pattern of your system. A design system is not just design docs and components. It's also the things that are the underlying mesh, the fabric that makes everything up. And that when you look at what is smaller than a component, you look at stylistic properties. And so tokens are the smallest repeatable pattern in your system. Design tokens help to create brand consistency. They do this by allowing us to create a subatomic order for our stylistic properties. We do that through carefully curated systems, spacing scales, color palettes, things like that. They provide common language and definition for our UI. And not just the UI, they also allow us to give common definition to things at the global level, things like page widths, breakpoints, those kinds of things, but also things just at the more granular level. If we're looking at like a button background and button foreground, for an example. They increase development velocity. And we're gonna spend some time talking about developer specific highlights for tokens, but they increase velocity because we no longer have to hunt for certain values. We no longer have to use different techniques for different systems like Sketch or Figma or Photoshop comps. We're able to just kind of go to a singular definition space and pull in our values from that point on. And maybe one of my favorite things about design tokens is that they enable multi-branded design systems, not just multi-brand, but also multi-theme. How many websites or applications have you looked at that have a dark theme? Design tokens can help to enable that workflow. When we actually take a look at design tokens, there is the raw value of a design token, and then there is the artifact, which is the compiled end result of a token. Design tokens are format agnostic. So if we look at this code block down here, there is nothing in here that specifies Sass or CSS or JavaScript or anything like that. It's just the name and the value. Because design tokens are raw, they are key value pairs. Here is our key color brand primary, and then here is our value. And because they're not concerned about specific formatting or any kind of specifications at this point, we're able to do things like set up our themes, set up our components, either again in a global way or granular way. But you're also able to reference these colors and these tokens all throughout your system. And that can be in other tokens. And so I don't have this example here, but if we had color black available, instead of using this hex code, we could reference the color black with color black value. And so if we were to set up something like that, we could have hierarchies of our tokens, and we could start to work towards having themes all the way at this level here before we're even getting to Sass or CSS or JavaScript. And the last thing I'll say about tokens in the raw sense here is that they remove the need for magic numbers. And when I've talked about this before, I've had some folks ask if I could kind of go into some detail about magic numbers. I didn't create the term. It's a term I've heard before, but essentially what it is calling to is whenever you look at CSS or SAS or anything that is defining the stylistic properties of a component, when you see something that is hard-coded, a hard-coded spacing, pixel value, rem value, whatever percentage or whatever you're using for that, hard-coded hex colors, all things like that, anything that's hard-coded, because there's room for error. You likely recreated yourself in either just defining this token value again. Either way, magic number is it's something that is hard-coded into the system. And so when we look at the outcome of design tokens after we've gone through a compilation process, we look at artifacts as the final state of tokens. So there would be a SAS file with all of your SAS tokens or all of your CSS tokens or JavaScript variables. They adhere to specifications. So while our design token in the raw state can not have to be concerned with specifications or what the end state of that token will be down the line, we can just focus into what we want these tokens to be, and the specifications get handled as they're compiled. So if you look at things like Swift, Android XML, those have very specific requirements that are different than a SAS variable or a CSS variable. And so we're able to take care of that during a compilation process. These artifacts are obviously, they're not just built to represent what you could do with them. They're published as NPM packages. And here at Knapsack, when we set up a workspace for you, you get that package publishing flow from day one. That just comes available right out of the box. And so you're able to use those artifacts, our SAS or CSS JavaScript, and lots of other formats. You're able to use those today to build components. So that brings us to sort of this next slide, design with tokens and build with tokens, tokens for everyone. Let's look at this example. This is an example of a cross-functional design to engineering flow. This is an example of how tokens can be added to the system or used to the system or updated. So step one, we usually start with a design that is getting started on. So design begins a new pattern or a new component. During that design process, that design outlines the need for tokens, and whether that is existing tokens or new tokens, those get created. A lot of times I see on like a Figma comp, there's multiple boards that sort of represent multiple states of the component. Also, that usually comes along with that is sort of an anatomy chart. You usually have like some arrows or some lines that kind of indicate, what kind of token you're using, whether that's spacing, colors, anything like that. So a dev is able to take that and build that into new patterns and build the new tokens. Those new patterns and tokens are then released during our normal engineering workflow. And then, of course, we're able to implement those components and those tokens in our product, which provides us with delighted users. I also want to call out, too, that when you're working through this flow, it's not just delighted end users. It's not just the folks that are using your system. These delighted users also become your designers. They also become your engineers. As you start to use these tokens, as you start to use this system, and you're able to bring it to more maturity, the dev experience, the designer experience, and the reliable implementation that results from those things is all increased. And so we get delighted users across the board. So let's talk about some developer specifics for why we should be using tokens and what they can do to enhance our world. They increase production velocity, something we already kind of talked about. They do that by allowing us to build things faster. Again, we're not hunting for these values anymore. We've got these systems that have been curated for us. And as you begin to build those things out, whether you're using SAS or CSS, a lot of times you start to create your own little mix-ins and tools and systems along the way that even strengthen using those design tokens more. And so you're able to just build those things faster and get things out the door quicker. We kind of touched on this already, but they improve your development experience. They do that through that centralized token definition and also through the centralized tooling that you begin to create as you're moving things from comp into actual development and then, of course, into production. You get that increased consistency like we just talked about. So there's no more guessing. There's no more magic numbers. You're not just scouring a comp to try to figure out what kind of spacing scale is being used. You're able to just use your brand's spacing scale. And then we improve scalability through granular design flexibility. And that's how we set up these tokens. And so there are global tokens that cover things like breakpoints and container widths. And then there's the more granular things like we talked about, like button foreground, button background. Making those changes to the system then becomes adjustments to design tokens versus having to go in and edit specific templates to achieve those things. And all this comes together with ensuring cross-platform resilience. And we do this by the wide format support that's available. And there's, in our system especially, just about every format you can think of. And if you can think of one we don't have, let us know. That would be quite interesting. So what does Knapsack do for developers? Well, it ships with a baked-in design token engine, which we're going to talk about here shortly. It comes pre-configured with build tools. So everything is already set up, local servers, local watches. We come out of the box with a SAS configuration, but it's highly configurable. So if you need to adjust that to a different format, you can easily do that. In fact, we support nearly every format like we just talked about, whether that's CSS, SAS, JavaScript, less, Swift, XML, TypeScript. There's probably some I'm not thinking of, but just about every format. And also we provide rich content blocks that offer windows into design tokens. So that provides the ability to have quick references and also to be able to copy and paste any value right away. Looks like I had a quick question here. How deep can I nest my tokens, colors, or anything else? As far as I'm aware of, there's not really a limit to how far you could nest a token. If you hit a limit, let us know. We could take a peek at that then, because it's either, there's a slight adjustment that we might need to make to our engine, or there's a potential that maybe there's a structural difference that we could make to how you're writing your tokens that might not require such a deep nesting. All right, let's go ahead and continue here. So let's talk about tokens for designers, and let's talk about some specific benefits for the design team. They create common language. So this is something that we've already kind of talked about, but I'm going to feed a fed horse here and talk about this again. Creating common language is super important because if we don't have specific names for things, we can't really define them and hold conversations about them. So creating these tokens in our system, it gives us that common language of global elements, again, things like container widths and breakpoints, all the way to things that are granular. And again, we're giving names to these aspects of our systems that before were just stylistic properties. So big win when you can do that. And when you do that, you enable subatomic design. So this is kind of calling out to the fact that a lot of times we look at components in the atomic design scale. The smallest ones are usually atoms, and then you've got molecules and organisms and so on and so forth. Design tokens are the things that make up the atoms. So they are subatomic. And they're the things that are, again, carefully curated. We're not just picking out random spacing values, random font sizes, things like that. We're using our scientific methods. We're using all the tools at our disposal, all the training that we have as designers to create these systems. And by doing that, we improve brand management. And that is from definition all the way to the deployment stage, especially when you look at a tool like Knapsack that provides non-technical contribution to the system. The definition of these components is not reliant on just an engineer to add these values. A designer can go into the system and adjust these color values, adjust values as they see fit. And then, of course, while we have that improved brand management from definition deployment, we also have a strengthened process to enforce brand consistency. And that is through using this common language, using these tools inside of our design system, creating processes inside of our design flows that call us to using design tokens in our designs. In our code reviews as engineers, when we're looking at these systems, we start to look for these magic numbers, and we start to look for aspects of the system where you could be pulling from a design token, and then reaping the benefits of all the past work that folks have done to get us to that state. And so that brings us to this increased efficiency level that, of course, is what we all really want and why we really want to use a design system. it enables us to make small or large scale updates pretty quick. Again, depends on how you have your tokens set up, but if you've got your brands and your themes set up in a specific way, then adjusting aspects of your UI, whether that's a small thing like font sizes, things like button values, or if you're looking at, again, the large scale things like container widths and maybe adding a new breakpoint size, all those things can happen, and they're streamlined. So what does Knapsack do for designers? It comes out of the box with cloud authoring. And that, again, that's for designers and non-technical users to be able to contribute right back to the system. We provide rich content blocks for documenting the entire system, everything from patterns, design tokens, design comps, user guides, etc. Anything you could think about that you could add to your system as documentation, you could do that. There's the ability to edit, commit, and deploy changes, especially to color tokens, and we're opening up authoring for all other kinds of tokens here shortly. And then, of course, we enable advanced multi-brand theming capabilities through asset sets. And when you're looking at specific components, when you've actually added an asset set for it, you can actually use our drop-down chooser to just toggle the different themes for that specific component. So if you've got a card component, but you've got 5 different themes, you can use the same exact markup, the same exact theme, or for the same exact template, but use different themes with different token values that help you achieve different experiences. So when is the right time to set this up? Well, here at Knapsack, we believe that the fastest way that you can get to your ROI is to ship the system the quickest. Oftentimes when we're talking to teams and we're looking at what we can do to get something out the door the fastest, we usually look at design tokens as that low-hanging fruit. It's the subatomic thing. It's the smallest reusable pieces of the system. And if we can get these things out the door, we can ship these things, we can start pressure testing them in products, we can start using them in our teams all before ever getting to the spot where we actually have components themselves. So the faster we can get to this stage, the better, and tokens are a fantastic place to go to. So that leads me to the shameless plug of the Knapsack token engine. Again, design with tokens and build with tokens. So why did we build our own token engine? That's a question we get a lot. We wanted a solid foundation for all of our customers. And since here at Knapsack, we believe that design tokens are a paramount aspect to any design system, we wanted absolute control over the ability to transform and compile those tokens into any format. We also really wanted to be forward-thinking, and so we wanted to support systems like iOS Swift and Android XML, and it required some custom transformations on our end, so we wanted to be able to own that process. Other libraries also had limitations around naming. So the way that you named your component resulted in the way that it was compiled or transpiled down the line. And we didn't want to force our users into any kind of naming specification. We wanted to look at the value of the token and to do our transforms and our adjustments based on that value. And lastly, we wanted to integrate design tokens directly into the Knapsack ecosystem. And we wanted to do that with first-class content blocks to demonstrate things like color swatches, box shadows, breakpoints, spacing. And here's an example of a simple table view. And we've got many other views for those things. Some other notable features, some of these are some repeats, but I think they're good to call out again, is that we enable designer and non-engineer contribution to the system. We do that with Git managed workflows. So everything is versioned. We leverage the W3C spec for design tokens. We provide flexible naming, as well as the ability to add metadata to tokens. So if you want to add descriptions to tell folks what those tokens are, you can do that. Knapsack provides dynamic documentation for all the tokens out of the box. We just kind of looked at some of those examples. We also support pretty much any format. So if you ever find a format that we do not support, let us know. And of course, we automatically publish these things as packages right from the gate out the box. Okay, so that was a mouthful. That was a lot of information. Now we're going to kind of take a look at working with tokens in Sass and CSS, and we're going to look at pulling these things into a React application. Oh, look at that, James Webb Telescope. Here we go. Okay, so what we're seeing here is this is the Knapsack workspace. I pulled this down and I'm running this locally. So I don't have any cloud interface here because I'm running this as an engineer. And we're going to do a couple things here. We're going to look at some design tokens. We're going to take a look at our color tokens as well. I'm also going to get some components ready for us. So we have a chance to look at, let's say, the button component. We're going to see some tokens kind of work their way into the system here. So I'm going to switch back over to my code editor. And here we are. So this is a Knapsack workspace. I've got this packages directory. For those engineers that are here, we're using Lerna and we're using workspaces here. So in this design token section, here's our design token file. This is where all of our tokens are defined. This will probably look familiar to a lot of folks out there that are used to something like Style Dictionary or Theo or a system like that. And so again, here's where everything is defined. In this dist directory, this is where all of our different artifacts get compiled to. And this is what ultimately gets published as an NPM package. And again, we get things like our CSS, we get SAS, less, JSON, pretty much any value, again, any format that you could think of, we just get that. And so we're able to do some really cool things. If I take a look at our styles, open up our components to our button, we can see that we're using our tokens. So I've got SAS or CSS variables in here, and we're pulling things in for like our spacing scales. We're pulling in our color for our text color. And then of course we've got different variations of our button that we're creating here, and we're able to use our tokens right in here. So color brand primary in here for border color and background, and we've got hover states for brand secondary, so on and so forth. And so again, this is how we're not choosing magic numbers. We're not coming up with magic values. These are things that are all throughout the system. So we take a look at here again, this is our primary color, and I hover, we can see our secondary. And if we look at things like our card, we can see that we also have that primary is here, and here's our same button. So let's go ahead and go back to our button. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of show off sort of how this stuff can work. And so we've got our button here, we've got our tokens here, and let's just go ahead and make some changes here. So let's change our primary color to, let's look at an existing color palette. Let's make it this like rich blue. And then green hover would be sort of interesting. So let's change this maybe to a black. We'll save that. And then we already started to get some recompiling here. What we see really quickly, we just changed our button all without ever touching button code. This is all through just design tokens. And again, it's all throughout the system. So if I go into our card here, we scroll down and we refresh the browser because it's a live demo, we'll see that the changes that we made, get trickled in right away. So there's that primary color here, our primary and secondary for this, and then in another scenario here, let's say that maybe we realize that all of our cards are going to use this like red color scale motif. Oh, there's a term for it. Anyway, it's going to use this like red design. And so again, I could just change this right here. Let's change this to rich. We'll go ahead and save this. We'll let a compilation happen. And then you just see this all get trickled in right away. So very quickly, we can see how tokens can enhance our system, speed up updates, and they get proliferated all throughout the system. And we use them actually for more things in Knapsack. We also use them for things like our homepage. So if I refresh my homepage, you'll see that these primary colors are here, and you can use these token values all throughout your UI. So pretty cool stuff. All right, next we're going to take a look at a React application. And this is one that we actually spun up on our last webinar. We used Knapsack to build this whole thing out. We use create React app. And so we built up this layout, and we were able to just copy and paste this right into an application and get this just available for us. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take this demo that we originally had, and we're going to build off of it. We're going to kind of give you a for instance. And so in this example, what we'll say has sort of happened is I just got a Jira ticket. I need to help to create this new banner for this website. And there's not a component for it because we already have a mature design system. And so I've got things like spacing scales and font sizes and those kinds of things already defined for us. And so without having to create a brand new component for all this, I could still take design direction, get a design comp through this Jira ticket, and then I could just kind of build this out to the system. So let's take a peek at doing this. So here, we'll switch back over to our application, and then I'm going to include some stuff at the top here. So we're going to pull in our styled components. I'm also going to just pull in some components that I created early on to kind of speed up this demo. We're going to go ahead and import some design tokens from the system. So here we go. These are some of the same tokens we were already looking for, looking at in some of the previous screens. So we'll get our color brand primary. We'll also get our color brand white. Let's see, I think we're also going to need a spacing, our spacing large token, and let's also get a spacing 2XL token, and let's go ahead and kind of continue this. So now we've imported this library that's going to help us to build out this component really quickly, just using tokens. Here we're pulling in some tokens, and we can do some cool things. I'm going to go ahead and just paste this in here. This allows us to create a custom banner component. And here we are. We're using our color brand primary. We're using color brand white. And we're using some of the other token values that we've got. And so I can just go ahead and add this to the system. So here we've got our hero. Let's put this underneath our hero component. Save this. And colors are showing. We got some fonts here. We're getting close. But let's go ahead and keep on working on this. So again, I've added some stuff to our system. We've got a inner component that I know I can use. I've got a heading component as well. And I know based on this comp that I have a H3 I need to add in here. And then of course, we're going to use a paragraph, and got some text for this. Give me just a moment. Okay, we're tossing our text, but we also have a button that we want to add. Again, we've already added all this to our system, so I can just go ahead and add a button. I can save this and go back here, and now we've got this all using design tokens. In fact, the comp that I had a image that it was going to use, so let's go ahead and also toss in our image. Save this, and here we go. We are on brand, we are consistent with our experience, and I was able to create this honestly within seconds, all using existing components, all using existing tokens, and we were able to just kind of get that just out the door. And so again, strengthened through tokens. And that is the end of the technical demonstration. I think we can open it up to see if any folks have questions or anything that they'd like to bring up for us. So there were some questions going on in the Q&A that were getting answered. So thank you very much to the Knapsack team that's on this call answering those questions. I'll go ahead and leave it open for just another minute or so. Okay. Well, it's been a lot of fun. I hope that you learned something about design tokens today. If you didn't learn anything about design tokens, I hope you had a good time. And we'll see you for the next one. Oh, look at this. We got a question in here. How to start defining the token's name? That's a great question. A lot of times that is something that happens internally. Either the design team already kind of has some naming conventions or naming standards that they've already sort of been working through. A lot of times you can glean from any kind of learning or any work that's been done there. Otherwise, getting folks together and having a conversation about that is usually a good way to do that. And Andrew just nailed it on the head when he said naming things is hard, because it is tough. So yeah, usually getting folks together and working through common systems is usually the best way to do that. A lot of times too, I see that folks, prefix names with what its use is. So a lot of times you might have like colors, but then you also have like the brand colors, then you might have, spacing scales, things like that. And when it comes to things like spacing scales, a lot of times folks are good with t-shirt sizing, 2X, 3X, medium, large, those kinds of things. But sometimes that's not the best approach. So really, it's just a per team basis. Let's see, we got some other good ones here. Is the W3, oh, that one got answered. Can Knapsack token format work with, say, Tailwind config objects? Yes, it absolutely can. In fact, I didn't go through it in this example, but, oh, actually, I don't have it for this example. But yes, we do have the ability to do Tailwind configs. And because we have a pretty flexible format that we export all of the tokens into, you can actually pull those specific categories like colors and spacing, things like that. You can pull those directly into the Tailwind config and then add those to the Tailwind output. And so your colors will be available through things like the BG or border utilities and things like that. And so you could just be kind of off the races and using all the goodies of inside of Tailwind, but also still using your tokens. So that's a great question there. Some really great questions. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see here. Let's see, we'll leave it open for another just second or so and kind of figure out if there's anything that we should do from here. I think we'll probably continue on this session. On the next one, we'll probably start looking at things more like theming, some advanced theming examples. Maybe we'll actually look at how to incorporate a Tailwind config, because that I think could be a fairly interesting thing. So keep an eye out on your inboxes. Keep an eye out for you folks that are working inside a Knapsack that saw our beacon notification about our webinar. They'll have more details about the next one, and we'll be looking forward to seeing all you folks there next time. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.